Skinwalkers. Today, I'm going to delve into the mystery of what a skinwalker is and share some stories. Check it out. There seems to be a common misconception about what a skinwalker is. Now, I talked to some of my Navajo friends, and the term skinwalker does come from the Navajo tribe. And they told me that the skinwalkers weren't always necessarily evil. Like now in popular culture, even among the Navajo people, it's generally considered an evil thing. But I feel like the westernization, the missionary schools, making Native Americans fear shamanism and their native roots, like for example with Eskimo people, the missionaries and the Christianization of our people, made people fear anything related to native mythology or shamanism. And I feel like that's the same thing throughout all the tribes in the lower 48. Of course, not everyone is going to be scared of these things or fear shamanism or fear the supernatural. But before westernization, it was a lot more accepted. So according to what I heard about what skinwalkers are, they were shamans that knew how to shapeshift. They would take the skins of an animal and mimic the spiritual energy of the animal. So let's say you want to become a coyote or a wolf. You'll take the skin of the wolf, and if you remember in my shamanism video, I said that animals are manifestations of spirit. So if you mimic the spiritual qualities of a wolf or a bear, and you have the fur of the wolf or the bear, since the fur is the embodiment of that spiritual power and it's made of it, like if you got a wolf pelt, the spirit of the animal is part of the animal. So if you have the pelt, you can amplify that spiritual energy of the wolf and you can become the wolf. Skinwalkers weren't always considered evil. In other words, shamans would shapeshift and they'd use skinwalkers as scouts, or they'd use them in war. Like you'd have a half wolf, half coyote, half man warrior that would fight for you, and he would be super muscular and tall and be able to run super fast, or take the form of an eagle, fly and scout out areas and be able to report back on like wartime activity or whatever. So skinwalkers aren't always evil, but nowadays skinwalkers are considered very evil, and the term skinwalker is kind of a blanket statement, like how people call everything a demon. Like if it's a shadow person, it's a demon. They see a little person, it's a demon. They see a Bigfoot, it's a demon. Anything with red eyes, a Dogman's a demon. It's a blanket term that can cover pretty much a wide variety of supernatural things. But there seems to be a consensus about what skinwalkers are, at least a little bit. Skinwalkers are shapeshifters. Skinwalkers are often seen as half wolf, half human, or half cow, half human, half goat, half human, something along those lines. And people often see them transforming into other creatures. With that, here are some interesting stories about skinwalkers. In several Native American traditions, Navajo folklore from the America Southwest, for example, tells of supernatural creatures. The werewolf, were-coyote, or whatever form the lycanthrope or demon is known as a skinwalker or Yanaldushi. Skinwalkers are shapeshifters, witches able to assume the attributes of various animals, especially canines. They walk in the skins of animals. According to witnesses' descriptions, it has a height of around 3 feet to 5 feet 7 inches, with black hair, reddish eyes, and long arms, while its face is nearly featureless. Behavior: scrambles on all fours, runs very fast, cries like a baby, wears skins of the wolf, coyote, cat, dog, or bear to take the appearance and powers of the animal. Just as with the Wendigo, skinwalkers also make appearances in contemporary accounts. The skinwalker gains supernatural powers by violating a series of cultural taboos, in this case, murdering a relative. The skinwalkers are shamans and necromancers who spread sickness by means of a powder made from corpses. For the Navajo, who revere pollen, this is a deep sacrilege. The skinwalker can also make tiny pellets out of bone. Most skinwalkers can turn into coyotes, and some of them have other shape-changing abilities as well. In 1936, in Yale Publications in Anthropology, Anthropologist William Morgan recounted an interview with a Navajo identified only as Hahago. Hahago said of Skinwalkers, "They go very fast. They can go to Albuquerque in an hour and a half. A 4-hour trip by automobile," according to Morgan. In January 1970, a hairy man about 5 feet 7 inches tall kept pace with a car driven by 4 youths near Whitewater, New Mexico. They increased the speed from 45 to 60 miles per hour, but it still kept up. Finally, one of them shot it and it fell down. In the fall of 1973, Western Pennsylvania played host to dozens of reports of strange ape-like creatures, sometimes seen in association with UFOs, said to have, in one witness's words, fire-red eyes that glowed in total darkness, to be 7 or 8 feet tall, and to give off a strong, unpleasant odor. Another type of creatures, investigator Stan Gordon noted, was said to have been between 5 and 6 tall. It was described as looking just like an extremely muscular man with a covering of thick dark hair. Again, in these reports, the arms were very long and hung down past the knees. This creature appeared to have a superior agility, exceeding that of a deer. From footprints discovered, the stride of the creature varies between 52 and 57 inches. In these reports, there was no indication of odors. At 8:30 on the evening of October 31st, 1991, as she drove on Bray Road near Delavan, Wisconsin, approximately 30 miles southeast of Jefferson, site of the 1936 Shackleman encounter, a young woman felt her right front tire jump off the pavement as if it had hit something. She stopped the car and peered into the misty darkness, where she saw a dark, hairy form racing towards her. It had a thick, bulked-out chest. She retreated into the vehicle and was just starting to speed away when the figure leaped onto her trunk. The trunk was too wet for a firm grip. However, she had heard the creature fall off. Returning later with a young friend, she glimpsed a big form rising from the side of the road. By itself, these sightings would be little more than a curiosity, but, as it turned out, it would be one of a number in the area. When word of it got out, other local people stepped forward with their own accounts. In the fall of 1989, Lorraine and Drizzy, rounding a site along Bray Road, saw what she first took to be a person kneeling in a hunched position at the end of the road. When she slowed, the figure stared at her from a distance of no more than 6 feet across the passenger side of the car. It was covered in a grayish-brown hair with big fangs and pointed ears. His face was long and snouty, like a wolf, she told reporter Scarlett Snaky. Though it was evening and the figure's eyes were not in the headlights, they glowed nonetheless. They were a yellowish gold color. The arms were really kind of strange, jointed like a man's or a woman would be, she said. He was holding his hands with his palms upward. The arms were muscular, like a man who had worked out a little bit. The back legs looked like they were behind him, like a person kneeling. The sighting lasted for a maximum of 45 seconds. She had no idea what the creature could be beyond a freak of nature until she went to her library and found a werewolf illustration. Around that time in Elkhorn near Delavan, dairy farmer Scott Bray observed a strange-looking dog along his pasture on the Bray Road. Bigger and taller than a German shepherd, it had pointy ears and a hairy tail, with long, scraggly, grayish-black hair. It was built heavy in front, real strong chest. Bray pursued it into a rock pile and was perplexed when he could not find it there. In the soft soil nearby, he found enormous footprints, 4 or 5 inches in diameter, leading and disappearing into pasture grass. Bray thought he had seen some type of wild dog cross. There is another account about the Skinwalker from Brad Steger's book, entitled Real Vampires, Night Stalkers, and Creatures from the Dark Side. He said that his good friend Priscilla Garduno Wolf, an Apache medicine woman from New Mexico, told him of her encounter with such an entity, which occurred when she was a teenager. It was a beautiful day and I was ready for prom. I caught a ride with a friend, Molly, and the night went very well. However, at the end of prom, Molly told me to catch a ride home with someone else. She was going to Alamosa with her boyfriend. I asked several people, but no one offered to take me home. I lived 3 miles from the school, and at the time all the roads were dirt. I had no choice but to walk home in my formal, holding my heels in my hand. The moon was shining, but it was still very dark. I wasn't scared until I got close to the area where people claimed the wolf boy was buried. Grandpa said that the old people buried him there in the 1500s. Nearby, there was a huge tree that my grandfather had named Skinwalker Tree because of sightings of skinwalkers in that area. I wanted to walk back to my grandmother's home, but I was scared that the wolf boy would appear to me, so I continued walking east towards my mother's home. When I crossed the old bridge, I heard a noise coming from under it. I looked back and I saw what appeared to be a calf walking towards me. I started to run and it began to run, following me. It was about 300 feet to my mom's home, and I took off running fast. The animal stood up on its hind legs and it almost caught me. I could hear its loud breathing. It sounded not human or animal-like, but different. I made it to my mother's farmland, and the thing jumped across the fence. When I got to the door of the house, I banged so hard to wake my mom up. "Open up!" I kept yelling. "Something's chasing me." Mom made it to the door. I pushed her aside and shut the door, and we locked it. She shut the lights off so no one could look into the house. My baby brother Adam was sleeping, and after a while, I laid down. I was so worn out from running, I heard someone turning the knob of the door and open the room towards me. All of a sudden, it was next to my bed. I screamed for my mom to turn the lights on, but she was having a hard time getting up. It was like she was in a daze. I felt the skinwalker's hand on me, touching my face and my throat. His smelly breath and loud breathing were right next to me. The monster was tall and skinny, half human, half something that looked like a cow. His hands were rough and hairy, and he had long nails. I couldn't breathe. I screamed again and asked God to help me. I scratched my neck and I was bleeding. When my mom managed to turn the light on, it vanished. Mom saw 3 scratches on my neck and said it was a devil that had left his claw marks on me. We got up and checked the door. It was still locked, but the door hadn't mattered to the skinwalker. By morning, the scratches were gone, just vanished. I wrote 2 stories years later, and I called The Devil's Claws and The Skinwalker. In Hunt for the Skinwalker by Colm A. Keller and George Knapp in 2005, these authors relay several interesting accounts of modern-day skinwalker encounters, including the following. One story told on the Navajo reservations in Arizona concerns a woman who delivered newspapers in the early morning hours. She claims that during her rounds, she heard scratching on the passenger door of the vehicle. Her baby was in the car seat next to her. The door flung open and she saw the horrifying form of a creature she described as half man, half beast, with glowing red eyes and gnarly arms that was reaching for her child. She fought it off, managed to pull the door closed, then pounded the gas pedal and sped off. To her horror, she says the creature ran along the car and continued to try to open the door. It stayed with her until she screeched up to an all-night convenience store. She ran inside, screaming and hysterical, but when the store employee dashed outside, the being had vanished. According to one contemporary Navajo interviewed by Kelleher and Knapp, a skinwalker is the size of a human, 6 foot and under. They don't come in most of the time to where the animals are at. They come in to where people are at. They come right here. You'd never know he was standing here looking at you in the middle of the night. They can take shape of anything they want to take shape of. The shapeshifting ability of the skinwalkers can result in quite dramatic incarnations. In this case, the skinwalkers were in the form of a human with a dog head. They were also smoking a cigarette. The bizarre shapeshifting tendency has also been associated with the Beasts of Bray Road, a contemporary werewolf-like creature from Wisconsin, documented by Linda S. Godfrey. In one case, an eyewitness describes watching such a transformation take place. It appeared then to be an overly large dog or something like that, and then its legs started moving real fast. The closest thing I could think of to describe it is when you see a person breakdancing, when they're spinning and kicking. And I was standing there trying to make sense of all that, and I wondered if it was 2 dogs fornicating. And then the only way I could describe it was that it was morphing. And when it stopped, it turned and looked at me, and it had this dark, hairy body but the head and face of a gorilla. Godfrey admits to being a bit confused by such reports of supernatural behavior on the part of the beast, especially when those reports are compared with the more typical reports, which usually give the beast a very flesh and blood characteristics. As Godfrey describes one of the earliest encounters with the beast, its need for food in the case of roadkill is quite apparent. She describes the experience of her witness in this way. As she drove forward and saw the creature from the front, its position was what got her attention. However, it was kneeling, she said. Its elbows were up, and its claws were facing, so I knew it had claws, she added. I remember the long claws. The claws had a chunk of what looked like a dead and flattened small animal, roadkill. She had the impression that the creature had been dining upon it. Its eyes reflected the glow of her headlights, and as most animals will at night, she was surprised when the creature didn't run away, but turned its head to gaze back at her. She described the animal as dark brownish gray, the size of an average man, maybe 5'7" and 150 pounds. The creature also seemed to enjoy scavenging from garbage cans. Godfrey recounts one eyewitness report of two large animals prowling through the garbage cans under the glare of the streetlight. The creatures had ears like a German shepherd, long sinewy bodies, and oddly small feet. They were covered in pale gray fur and had long snouts with black noses. Despite these reports of animal-like behavior that just seems to indicate natural explanation for the beast, Godfrey's files are filled with stories like the story of the shape-shifting breakdancer, which seem to indicate a more supernatural explanation. Some witnesses insist that what they have seen is an odd but natural creature. Others describe it in demonic and supernatural terms. Sometimes, Godfrey notes, what witnesses report cannot easily be classified into either category, but has characteristics of both natural and supernatural phenomenon. Sometimes, she writes, it's difficult to separate the two categories, as the border between them occasionally turns porous, allowing things to seep fluidly between them. According to what I know about shamanism, I know a lot of shamans. My mom's a shaman. I've been in native culture my whole life. According to what I know about shapeshifting, humans are not the only things that can shapeshift. Little people can shapeshift, Bigfoot can shapeshift, and there's probably a myriad of other beings that could shapeshift. Humans are among the creatures that can shapeshift. Humans are also among the creatures that can walk between realms, but we don't know how to anymore. We forgot that. Walking between realms is lost knowledge. Humans no longer know how to do it. It's possible that there's people out there that still know how to walk between realms, like what the little people and the Bigfoot do, like going between parallel versions of Earth. But we no longer generally have that information or knowledge. I have stories of little people shapeshifting. There's a lot of people who see, like when you hear of Dogman, you hear the cracking sound when they get up, like kind of like a werewolf movie. I've heard stories of people seeing little people transform like that, like a little 3-foot tall hominid start crackling and popping and becoming really tall and long. And it scared the hell out of them. Some of my friends from some of the villages have had encounters like that. So I know for a fact that humans aren't the only things that could shapeshift. And I know that humans still today, there are people out there that know how to shapeshift. In the Navajo res, in some of the villages, there's people that know how to do it. I don't know how to do it, but I was planning on trying to train with some of the people that know how. Although I do know that there is risk with shapeshifting. It's possible to get trapped in an in-between form where you don't know how to return to your original form. I have a couple of unrelated stories to Skinwalkers or Shapeshifter. My mom was telling me that her friend kept begging her grandpa, who was an Anakuk, which is a shaman for... Shaman isn't really a native term. Anakuk is for Inupiaq people, Inuit people. Or a witch. You can call them witches or wizards, whatever term is more... you're more used to. It doesn't really matter. But he could shapeshift. He could turn into an eagle. He could turn into a bear. He could turn into whatever. The kids were begging him to take them flying, and he kept saying, no, I won't do it. Like, I'm not gonna. And then one day, he finally gave in, and he was going to take them flying. He's going to transform into a giant bird and take them. So he transformed. And when he started transformed, he got really muscular and really big, like 8, 9 feet tall, 12 feet tall, something crazy big. And huge wings sprouted from his back, and his head had a huge beak. And he grabbed them and he started flying in the air. And the kids were terrified. They thought it was a demon. And this lady thought it was a demonic power from Satan. And she became super religious and Christian, swearing away shamanism and native this and native that. And it scared the hell out of her for life. But the point is, the guy shapeshifted. He shapeshifted. So what I found interesting about this account was a lot of the time when we hear of these strange, like alligator man, wolf man, goat man, there's all kinds of weird man mixed with animals. They're often tall and muscular. And when he transformed from a short human, he's probably around 5'5" or something. Like, most native people aren't very tall, at least up north. Down south, there are some natives that are tall. Like, I'm 6'2", I'm not full native though, I'm mixed. Anyway, the fact that when he transformed, he became muscular and tall makes me think that when you shapeshift or mix with an animal and are part human and part something else, for some reason it makes people get tall and muscular. I don't understand the logic behind it, or why it happens, or how it happens, or if it has to happen, but I know that it does happen. And just the mere fact, from the scant evidence we have of people shapeshifting from a half human to half animal form and being tall and muscular, from the scant. Like, I just know of that one story. Maybe I heard a couple others. But it makes me think that it's a side effect of being half something and half something else. I believe shapeshifting is legitimate and real. I've met people who've seen it. I've met people who've seen people transform into something else and it scared them. And there are so many stories like this of people encountering a supernatural creature and seeing it crack and morph and jerk around and become something else. And if you watch the lycanthrope movies, like werewolf movies, they play on that. They play on what people have seen and they put it into a movie. Anyway, on a closing note, to shapeshift, you don't necessarily have to be evil, but you can be evil to do it. It's kind of like science. You can split the power of the atom to make atomic power, or you can do it for good, or you can make a bomb that kills tons of people. Shamanism is the same way. You can do things with negative spirituality or negative energy, or with positive energy. You don't necessarily need to be evil to shapeshift. You can be evil, though, to shapeshift. It's an option, but it doesn't mean that it is evil just because something can shapeshift. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Expect more. I'll be coming out with more and more videos as I get into the routine of making them again. Just taking some time, but I'm getting used to it, don't worry. Remember to share the video, share it in all the paranormal groups you can if you want to help me out. And click the little bell icon if you want to get notifications for future videos. This is Kit the V Talk. See you guys next time.